Hey guys, it's Yuval here, and in this video I want to walk you guys through the 16mm film pack. We're going to go into the folder, see the different assets that we have, and then we're going to jump into the editing software, and I'm going to show you guys how to practically use the assets, and then also share some of my favorite tips to get the film look. So let's jump right in. Alright, so when you download the pack, this is the file that you're going to get. It's a Century8 16mm film pack. It's a zip file, so you need to unzip it. And once you do that, you have this folder over here. And if I open this up, you can see you have the film burns, which also includes textures. Then you have film mats, and we have grain. So these are the three categories that you get in this folder, in this pack. So when we go into the film burns folder, you can see we have 4:3 and 16:9. So these are the two aspect ratios that you can choose. The files are exactly the same, just the aspect ratio is different. And you can see we have all of these film burns, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 21. So there's actually 21 unique film burns, and then you also have all of these 16mm textures, and let's play some of them. Each film burn is unique. It has slightly different colors, different timings, different textures, and different length of film burns. And then we also have the textures, which are not film burns, but just grains, artifacts, and different kinds of textures that you can use very creatively in different scenarios for different things. So these can be used as overlays or maybe as background to a text. There's a bunch of things you can do with it, really. So this is what we have in the film burns folder. Let's move on to film mats now. So you can see we have 6 different film mats. We have this one, which is the only 8mm one. Then the rest are 16mm, and these are all pre-keyed. So that means when you drop them into the timeline, you don't have to do any blending modes. You don't have to do anything. You just drag and drop into the timeline, and you have the mat. And we're gonna get into the editing software in a second, and I'm gonna show you all of that. So these are the mats that you have over here. They're all moving, so it's an animation. It's not just like a JPEG file. So these actually do have some motion into them to make them look more realistic and integrate better with the footage to make it look more believable. And then we have the grain folder, which contains 3 colored film grain elements, and then also monochromatic black and white grain, 500T. There's 3 of them over here, 2 of the 250D, and then with the 50D we have 2 more. So there's a few options here. Some of them are smaller grain, some of them are kind of harsher or larger. So let's go ahead and drag this folder into Premiere Pro. And of course, everything I'm showing you is going to work pretty much the same in any other software. So we have this clip over here. It's created to make it look a little bit like film. That's from our film power grade emulations. So I'm gonna start applying some of the elements, and I'm gonna show you guys how these work and also give you a few tips to make them even better. So let's start off with the film mats. Usually I like to start with that because it really gives you like an instant film look when you add the film mat. So I'm gonna go with 16:9 because my footage is 16:9. So like I said before, all of these assets are pre-keyed with an alpha channel, so all you have to do is drag and drop. We don't have to do anything else, and I'm going to show you this right now. And I'm going to use the 16:9 Dirty plus Glow film mat, which is my personal favorite. So I'm simply going to drag this with my mouse into the timeline, and voila, there we have it. It's already pre-keyed. We don't need to change any blending mode. We don't have to do anything, and instantly we get that film look. And what I want to show you now is all of these mats that you see. They have these parts in the bottom and the top, which is basically like an overscan. So essentially we're seeing like a little bit of the next frame and a little bit of the previous frame in the bottom and the top of the thing here. So we're actually seeing like the film gate. So how do we make it look believable? Because obviously, just like this, it looks very cut out, doesn't look very good. And there's a really easy way to make it look really good, very fast. So what I'm going to do is just take the film mat and drag it all the way to V4. So I have 2 other video tracks over here. And now I'm going to duplicate my footage. I'm doing this by holding down the Option key or Alt if you're in Windows. And I'm just dragging this up. And then I'm just going to reposition it just like that over the top there. And then I'm going to duplicate it again and do the same thing just on the bottom. And now you can see that it actually looks realistic. Okay, so that's what you do with these frames that have the bottom and the top in them. So that's how you would do something like that. And by the way, here's a quick tip for you guys. If the mat doesn't fit within your sequence, let's say you have like a wider sequence that is not 16 by 9, what you have to do is uncheck the uniform scale over here. And then you could actually control the width and the height individually. So essentially we could make this more narrow, or we could make it wider if you have something short on anamorphic, or you just have a wider aspect ratio. So that's a quick tip for you. But now let's look at the other elements as well. So let's look at another example here. This is a clip I shot in Portugal with my GH5. So not a fancy camera, but I really like this shot. And now we're going to make it look really great. So I'm gonna go into the 4:3 film mats because I shot this in the 4:3 aspect ratio. And for this one, I think I'm going to go with the basic film mat. And I do have to scale it down because it's a higher resolution than my footage. So I'm just gonna scale it down a bit. And there we have just the basic frame. And now I wanna add a little bit of film burn in the beginning of the clip. And I just wanna take this part over here. Okay, so I'm gonna drag that into the beginning of my clip. I'm gonna change the scale to fit my composition. And then you can see, like right now, we can just see the film burn. It's not really overlaying with our footage. So what we want to do is go into the blend mode over here, and we're just gonna change that to screen, and you can play around with different blending modes as well. So now we have this nice film burn at the beginning of the clip. And this could also be used, of course, to transition between 2 shots as well. And now let's go ahead and add some real texture to this. I'm gonna go into the grain just over here, Century8 grain. And me personally, I really like gritty, textury, dirty footage. So that's why I'm going to go with the colored grain. So you can see with these ones, they have a lot of presence, like they're stronger grains, and they also have color. So you can see if I go into one of the other ones, let's say the 50D, you can see the grain is actually much smaller. And also if I zoom in, you can see it's completely monochromatic, it's black and white, whereas the colored one, you can see how different that is. So I'm going to start with this one, the colored film grain 2, and I'm just going to adjust the scale. And obviously we need to change the blending mode again, just like we did before. And for the grain, usually you would want to use overlay or soft light. Soft light would probably be the most subtle blending mode. So just look at the texture that we added over here. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit better. So that's with the grain, that's no grain. So you can really see we're adding a lot of texture here and also a little bit of color. And to me, this is like way more realistic than the black and white grain, because real grain does have color, but it really all comes down to your creative choice. Colored grain might be a little bit much for you. So you can experiment and choose what fits your video and your scene. So if I go ahead and change the soft light to something like hard light, you can see how now it's really affecting the image, like way more than it did with the soft light. Let me just put it on soft light again so you guys can see the difference. So right now we're on hard light and this is soft light. So you can see it's a really big difference, and it's great because you have this flexibility with the blending modes to choose whatever intensity you like. And then of course you could also always go in with the opacity and make it more nuanced or less nuanced. So you basically have different types of grains, then you also have different blend modes, and you also have the opacity. So these are the three main parameters that you could use to make the grain look different, and that really gives you a lot of flexibility. So something that I like to do if I really want to go far and push the image and make it look super textury and dirty is I actually duplicate the grain and then I make it bigger with the scale. And maybe this one we can put on soft light. So now I actually have two layers of grain. One is really big grain and the other is smaller grain, and that gives a lot of depth, and it also of course makes the footage really grainy, which sometimes I like. So you can see before we added any of the grain, this is what we had, and now with these two layers of grain on, we're getting this. So it's really getting quite crazy but also beautiful. And then just as the last touch, what I really like to do, and this is just something that is built into Premiere, so it's not anything from our pack, but what I like to do is add some Gaussian blur to the image. So I'm gonna put that on the footage, and let's say I'm gonna go for blurriness of like around 5, and you can see that really softens up the image. And then because we have the grain on top, it kind of gives you back the sharpness but with less detail. So that really, for me, that really integrates the grain really well with the image. It makes everything blend together. Usually film, if it's not 35 millimeters, it's usually a little bit blurry. It's not as sharp as digital, especially if we're talking about something like 8 millimeters. So I like to blur the image a little bit and then put the grain overlays on top of it, and then it really looks realistic and it doesn't look cut out. It doesn't look like you just overlaid the grain. So by adding this blur to the image, and also by adding like 2 layers of grain, I think it really creates a beautiful film look like we just got now. So with the film matte, film burn, grain, and just a little bit of Gaussian blur, this is what we get. So yeah, this is mainly the way that I like to use these assets. I think integrated together, the film matte, grain, and film burn, they really give you that full film look. Whereas if you only use a film matte, or if you only use film burn, it doesn't really look that realistic. So when you blend all of these together and just add that tiny bit of blur, I think it works perfectly. So this is the basics of how to use all of these assets in this pack. It's a very powerful pack filled with different assets that can easily and instantly give you the look of film. There's a lot of flexibility here to play with the blending modes and the different assets together to give you guys different looks. So make sure you play around with everything and just find the style that works for you, for your project. And hopefully this video was helpful and insightful for you. So on behalf of myself and the Century8 team, we want to thank you for purchasing the pack, and hopefully it gives you guys value and helps you elevate your work and get it to the next level. And if you get to use these products on a cool project, maybe tag us over at Instagram. It's Century8 millimeters. That would be really cool. But yeah, that is it for this video.